Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Worldwide Quest sponsored webinar, Theatrical Adventures with Derek and Colin. I'm Derek Boys, and I'm going to introduce you shortly to the Colin of Derek and Colin, who is the world famous improviser Colin Mochrie. But before we get there, I want to tell you a little bit more about myself and what I'm hoping to have happen today for this wonderful webinar. For those of you who don't know me, I've been an actor and a director for many years across Canada and around the United States and around the world, including times with the Stratford Festival, the Shaw Festival, and for the last 17 years, I've been a resident artist and an ensemble member of the Soulpepper Theatre Company, which is headquartered in Toronto. And one of the highlights of that time at Soulpepper has been that I have been made in charge of their audience enrichment department, and that has allowed me to get to know wonderful people like you who are theater enthusiasts. And I've been so inspired by your knowledge of theater, your love of theater, and your curiosity about theater. And it's that inspiration that had me go to Worldwide Quest and see if there was a possibility of me organizing theater tours to take people like you with me to have adventures in other countries. And we were all set to go for a trip to the UK last September when the worldwide pandemic hit, and we had to shut that down. But the good news is we have rescheduled a UK trip for April of next year, not next month, but next year, 2022. April 1st to 9th, I'm hoping to host a tour to the UK to see amazing theater in Stratford upon Avon, in Bristol at the Old Vic, at the amazing theater they have in Bath, and theater in London as well. And as I reflected on why I wanted to do these adventures and think about what I'm missing during the pandemic, being a theater practitioner, is the adventure of theater. And it's what I wanted to focus on today, to give all of you and myself a kind of inoculation of theatrical adventure, to get all of us churning again about the exciting times when we can travel again and go to the theater again. So I thought, who better than to spend some time with my dear friend, Colin Mochrie. And Colin, I'm going to invite you to join me on screen here, if you would. There's Colin Mochrie, who, for those of you that can't possibly not know this wonderful face, but Colin is, of course, one of the world's most impressive and well-known improvisers. He's an author. He's acted in film and TV. He's hosted game shows. He's an all-around brilliant, brilliant fellow, and he's one of my most famous friends. Colin, welcome to this webinar. I'm thrilled that you're here. And what I want to accomplish today is for you and I, you sent me some great pictures of places that you have played and visited, and I'm sure will evoke all kinds of memories there. I have a few photos myself, which will evoke a few memories, and I just want to ask a few questions, and we just get excited about theater and traveling, and hopefully that everybody will have a wonderful time. How does that sound to you?
Sounds good.
Excellent, excellent. So as we go back, you and I go back to theater school days in Vancouver, and I did a webinar last week where I was reminiscing about Anthony Holland, who ran the school, and how he instilled in us this love of theater that has somehow stuck with us through thick and thin.
Yeah, he would have been 101
to serve tea in the theater. Sorry, go ahead.
He would have been 101 yesterday.
Wow. And he didn't die that many years ago, just a few years ago.
Yeah, when he passed away, he was actually working on a one-man show about the women of Shakespeare. He was going to play all the famous female roles in Shakespeare. A 98-year-old man. I would have loved to have seen it.
Isn't that great? What a guy. And he, and there we were, leaving theater school in our teenage years, launching into a career that we had no idea would last as long as it has, and got us through all this. And as I talked about in my little intro, that when people ask me, how did you survive the rigors of that horrible business? And I said, it's about adventure. It's been a wild adventure. How about you?
Yeah. I mean, I started mostly doing acting. I know, in Vancouver, we were going around to all the arts club and the playhouse, general auditions. And then I got into improv. But again, it was the adventure part. I never thought, oh, this is going to be my career now, because nobody really knew what it was at that point. So I'm incredibly fortunate that a show like Whose Line came along and sort of put the focus on improv and the one skill I'm really good at. So, but yeah, it's always, as you say, the word adventure, and for many people, the word adventure would have different meanings. But really, there were times where you go, I don't know what's happening tomorrow. I have no idea. And yet somehow you get through it and you rise above it. And
I think of our first adventure of doing sketch comedy at the Rebaw's Pie Factory in Vancouver.
Oh my God. God bless you for remembering the name. A pie factory. Yeah, I wish I could say that that was the most unusual place I've done a show.
I
But
think we were
man, yeah,
paid in pie, weren't we?
we were, and we were happy. We were happy to be paid in pie. Um, but at that age, you're just excited to be on stage and to be, connecting with an audience and doing what you love to do. You never really think about the ramifications.
No, no, and our adventures have taken us all around the world, across North America, and so I thought it'd be fun if we just clicked into a few little places that would remind us of where we've been and what sort of memories come to our minds when we see those. And also, one thing I wanted to talk to you about before we get there is one of the projects that you're involved in now is a movie called Act Social, which people can access on actsocialfilm.com. And what I loved when I saw the preview for it was that you were going to be hooked up to some kind of a brain scan while you were improvising and and see what your brain does. And of course, in the clip, I couldn't see what happened. But will you be a bit of a spoiler alert and tell us
Yeah,
what you learned from that?
it was horrific.
Or was it?
Um, I had earphones, a mask, a clear mask covering my face, and then I'm put into an MRI. It was for an hour and a half. And I mean, it wasn't too bad. The earphones, after about 20 minutes, were really hurting. So another hour of that. But it was fascinating. They had, I'm trying to think of it. Okay, an example. They would say, okay, name 3 colors, and they would go, here are the colors you can say, uh, red, white, and blue. That's something you have learned. Then when we say 3 colors, improvise, make up 3 different colors. And so they would get the base of what it looked like when I had memorized something. And so I did little improvs. And then apparently this doctor has been experimenting with jazz musicians, visual artists, and they find that when people are improvising, the part of your brain that criticizes yourself, the self-criticism, um, the activity lowers and the
Ah,
creativity bursts through. So yeah, he has it was, I mean, Lord knows it was interesting.
wow, that's fascinating. Yeah, good for you. Well, I'm going to watch that. I'm excited to see that. And people, again, can see that at actsocialfilm.com and see Colin under the MRI and see what his brain scan looks like. Awesome. I'm going to bring up one of your photos to start,
Okay.
and you tell me where we are and what we're seeing. So I just pressed the button that should have made it advance. It didn't, but let's see what happens if I click on that and then have it advance.
This is an
There,
adventure.
there we are. Yes, an adventure. Where are we and
This
what is this?
is Sandy, Utah, and this is the Sandy Amphitheater. And why this was interesting to me was I'm before everything went uh, insane, I was doing a show with a hypnotist where he would bring people up on stage, 20 people, hypnotize them, get them down to the best 5, and then they and I would do an improv set while they were under the influence of
Love it.
hypnosis. So they organized this tour. This was our first show, and it was outside with Mormons. So I, you know,
Hypnotized Mormons.
we'd done shows before, but it was in sort of a, enclosed, like a regular theater. And I said to Assad, the hypnotist, is this going to be difficult? Um, I mean, are you going to be able to hypnotize these people with, outside where there's noises of birds and whatever? And he said, I don't know. I went, oh. And that was always his thing when I would say, oh, and so if they're hypnotized and I ask them to do this, will they do it? And he goes, I don't know. It depends on the subject. They might, or they just might seem like they're stoned and not do anything. So it was with a little trepidation. I went into this show, but it ended up, and he's amazing at what he does. He's an amazing hypnotist, and it did work out. We actually had one of our better shows. We had this amazing subject who became like a jack of all trades, sang a Broadway song that we made up together and was
Oh my
just like the
God.
star of the evening. It was amazing.
Isn't that amazing? How many seats? That looks like a couple of thousand seats, does it?
Yeah, yeah. And it's got the mountains in it. It's like a
Oh,
beautiful backdrop.
glorious. Nice. Good memory. I like that one. All right, let's see if we can go to the next slide. I think this is one of mine. Oh yeah, this is a place that I played when I had this amazing time before I was at Stratford or at Soulpepper to do 10 years of travel with symphony orchestra shows. Beethoven Lives Upstairs and Vivaldi's Ring of Mystery. So we got to play all of the great orchestra halls across North America and around the world and get put up in the fabulous hotels that all the guest stars would be in. And this particular theater was in Columbus, Ohio, of all places, the Ohio Theater. And it's just the most beautiful jewel box. And that's what I would always love to come across these theaters when we're traveling, that orchestras would go in and take over these old, that was probably a vaudeville house and a movie theater, but they totally restored it
Yeah.
to its grandeur. And realizing that a lot of people think that actors, that we just live in theaters like this all the time. This is just what we do. Oh yeah, that's all just glorious.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, our jaws drop as much as the audience when we get to play a place like this. I would arrive, it was a great gig because we'd fly out on a Friday, do a rehearsal on a Saturday, show on a Sunday and fly back. But I would get like 5 hours in this theater with a rehearsal on my own and just wander around these places and soak it all in. Just glorious.
Beautiful.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just astounding. And in talking with this photographer last week on a webinar about looking up and seeing the ceiling and this inviting sort of circular feel and having people wrapped around the theater itself, just glorious, just glorious. Let's go to another one of yours. Here's one that you chose.
Is that the Pabst?
I see Homer and Raphael up on the ceiling, and
Oh.
but again,
Oh,
it's one of those, looks like one of those intimate tipped theaters where you're circled with boxes and.
yeah, I think that's the Pabst Theater in Milwaukee.
Okay.
And that's one of the
Made
theaters.
by beer, this one.
It's right across the street from a statue of the Fonz.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, this is one of the theaters that's become kind of a whole. Brad Sherwood and I are we've been touring for 18 years. We've played this theater 19 times.
Wow.
And I think it was one of the first theaters in the United States to have a fire curtain.
Okay.
And the acoustics are amazing. There was a big, I think Milwaukee was filled with German immigrants. So the theater is based on old German opera houses. So the sound is just amazing. And we always have the crew is great. And the first time we went there, it didn't look like this. It had hit some hard times, but the city got behind it and sort of started renovating, which, as you say, it seems to be was happening a lot. A lot of these old vaudeville theaters and burlesque places were being sort of refitted and refurbished and sort of brought back to their old glory.
It reminds me of when I did a show in Detroit. They just renovated the orchestra hall right in the midst of there was people outside with garbage cans and fires and warming their hands, and it was not in the best part of town, but a glorious place where they took a history, and apparently it had been homeless people had been living in it and having fires on the stage to stay alive and all, but they totally refurbished this beautiful hall. Just glorious. And it just something the art seems to do well, I think, is to be the renaissance of certain areas, or even I think of Toronto, of the distillery district, that we as a theater at Soulpepper moved in there before. I mean, there was a few art galleries, but we helped bring people to that area. And now you can't move around there. There's so many people there, but the arts are.
It really bothers me. The arts does not get the cred it deserves for bringing people out, to growing a community, to bringing the money it brings into the surrounding area. It's just sort of, I don't know, just taken for granted. And it's amazing what the arts does for a city and a community.
Right on. Good for you.
Yeah.
So here's one that you probably recognize. This is the Orpheum in Vancouver.
Oh, yes.
Which is, when we went to theater school, I think we both would have just dreamed that it wouldn't have been possible for us someday to play this space, but I got to go there with one of my symphony shows, and I'm sure you've played it as well with your tour.
Yeah, with Theater Sports, we had some shows there.
Okay. And again, a jewel box. Sorry?
Was it a movie theater when we were?
I think it certainly was at some point a movie theater. I don't know whether it started as that or whether it was a vaudeville house or some kind of a touring house but I remember watching movies there as a kid. And then it
Yeah,
became the Orpheum, home of the symphony orchestra and touring acts and all of that jazz. Glorious.
beautiful.
Yeah, it was.
Crowd.
It was lovely to go back and feel like, oh, I'm playing a venue that I've always dreamed of when I was a kid, that if one day I could ever and got to. Here's a theater in the round that you played.
Oh yeah, Phoenix, the celebrity theater. It's in the round, and also the it rotates.
Oh, really?
So,
Okay.
yeah, it rotates at like, you know, 0.5 miles an hour or something, or 5 miles an hour. But the closing sketch that Brad and I would do would be we'd have 100 live mousetraps on stage, and we'd be barefoot and blindfolded. And during, you know, the best
Oh
of
my
time, it's horrific. But when the stage is turning and you have no idea where you are at any point, it's particularly adventurous,
God.
adventuresome.
Adventuresome, I'll say. So there was no railing around that you could literally
No,
step off the stage?
we'd have a couple of crew members come out and they would yell if we got too close
Oh,
to the
good.
end.
Good. Cattle prod you back into the stage. Meanwhile, you're
Yeah,
stepping
just
on
have to hope
mousetraps.
we didn't like piss them off during sound check or something.
I love that idea of you stepping on mousetraps in that beautiful set. Gorgeous.
I know it doesn't make sense. And what was also for an improv show, um, what's so great about this is the audience is so close. Like even at the back, I think the farthest seat away is like 70 feet, so you can
Wow.
still talk to someone right at the back to get suggestions. So it was like a great theater for an improv show.
Nice. As I was reflecting on our chat today, I was thinking about how, yes, the theaters are, I love the theaters and the performances and all that, but it's also, there's something of the adventure of these towns and the people you run into in having them happen. And I was thinking about the number of volunteers who would come and pick us up at the airport. And I have memories of some wild drives from airports to hotels. I remember one place somewhere in the middle of America, we look for the sign of people holding up classical kids or Beethoven lives upstairs, and there was this lovely, very senior looking woman with a neck brace and some kind of a cast on her arm, sort of holding a shaky little sign up. And we went up and said, hi, we're here from Canada. Are you picking us up? Yeah, yes. So we gathered our stuff and took it to her car, which was kind of dented and didn't look great. And as we were halfway on this wild, crazy drive down a highway, I said to her, so you have a neck brace. Was there an accident? She went, oh yeah, about 3 months ago, I was picking someone up from the airport, had a terrible accident on the way to the hotel.
Oh,
Oh my God. But she's back behind the wheel. Get
it's
back
an
on that.
adventure.
Yes.
Uh,
Oh,
yeah, God bless them. A lot of seniors volunteer to do that sort of thing, or college students. It's once we were driving through, it was from Aspen, Colorado to Beaver Creek, and there was an amazing snowstorm. And our driver like turned to us at one point and said, I hope this isn't a problem. I only have one eye. Like, you know what? Keep it to yourself.
oh man, that just reminded me of a trip we had to take from Whitefish, Montana to Spokane, Washington. And I
Oh,
had to drive because our stage manager was sick and lying in the back seat feeling sick. And it was an absolute blizzard. And it was 4 hours of me just sitting behind a truck, shoulders up and looking at cars in the ditch on both sides, knowing we had to get to Spokane for a show the next day. Oh my God, horrifying. But we made it. Adventure, adventure.
adventure.
I sense a theme. Let's go to
Yes,
another.
near-death experiences.
Yes, indeed. Oh, yeah. So here, this is Singapore. I got to take
Oh, nice.
an opera atelier show. I was playing the bourgeois gentilhomme. I got to play that title character, and we did a one-act version of it with Dido and Aeneas playing the first half, and we were the second half. And this is the Victoria Theatre in Singapore, which was just an astounding trip. It was really exciting. And what's great about traveling overseas, which I know you've done, and we'll talk about some of your trips there too, is we were always given a few days to recover from jet lag when we arrived. I don't know if you got that as well as part of your gig.
Yeah, sometimes.
Right. And the story I remember about Singapore, and I'll show you a slide in a sec, was one of the days before we were to perform, it's part of the Singapore Arts Festival. in 2000, I think it was, and Opera Atelier run by Marshall Pinkowski and Jeanette Zing. And Marshall was going to take Gerald Isaac and I to the local radio station to do a radio talk show for the morning show. We were going to spend 2 hours on the air, talk about our show. People would phone in and we'd chat. So we got in a cab and went around the back of the island and got to see parts of Singapore that I don't think many people get to see, which is not as glorious and high-rising as most of it is. It's kind of where the real people live. Anyway, we got up this big hillway. We got to the big hill. We got to the radio station, which was covered in barbed wire and fences, because I think the media is very important in small countries about how important that is. And there was a sign, a no trespassing sign that I saw on the fence, and I'll show it to you now. It's the best sign I've ever seen in a foreign country. Can you see that?
Yeah, it's subtle.
Yeah.
It's a subtle warning.
I just thought it summed up Singapore in just a vision. Anyway, the long story short, we got in to do this radio talk show, and the wonderful young woman who introduced us talked about who we were and our show was, and she said, and now let's open up the phone lines for callers. Silence. Okay, so tell us a little bit more. We were there for 2 hours. We didn't get one phone call.
Wow. Oh,
we were not even sure if it was broadcasting outside of this tightly knit place, but we did not field one phone call. We were just crying. We were laughing so hard in between vamping for 2 hours about what we were to film. But there we are, a wonderful trip to Singapore.
Well, I mean, the wonderful thing about all this is you always get a story out of it, at the very least.
Yes. Yeah, that just lasts and resonates. And it always feels like each show has its own little, it's horrible to say going to war together, but it feels like you're putting a production on together. You are going through the trials and tribulations of leading to an opening, playing in front of a live audience, coming, and you have all that adrenaline and excitement fueled around a foreign place is very exciting. So this is one of yours, I think, is it?
Yeah.
Do you
this is, I believe it's the Palladium, the London Palladium.
Ah, yes. Yes.
Yeah. So we, last couple of years, Whose Line, the producers of Whose Line decided, oh, we can make more money if we make these guys do live shows.
Right.
And so we got on the London Palladium, which was one of my, I have a very British family, and there used to be a TV show called, I think, Live at the Palladium, where all the top acts, from the Beatles on would play. So it was like, became this mythic theater to me. And again, just fantastic. Again, and the crew are so, lovely and so into the history of the place. They were telling me at one point during World War II, a bomb had come through the ceiling, and they brought, guys in to disarm it. And as they were disarming it, it just started ticking. So they all ran away. Nothing happened. And one guy went back and then disarmed it. It still didn't go off, but I just realized the story has a really sad ending. So he got a medal for that, but then he died like 19 days later in some other attack. I'm sorry. I realized as I started telling that story, I thought, wait, this is not going to get better.
Well, no, it's actually a very heroic story that before he passed, he was able to save this amazing theater.
Yeah. So it always amazes me when I think of the theaters in Europe, what they went through, the fact that there's still so many of them that survived World War II and everything else that goes on. And I'm pretty sure they've done some more work there.
There was I was speaking with Peter Daisley, who photographed this book of London theaters that I talked about on a webinar last week, and he talked about how the angel on the top of the new Wimbledon theater was removed during the war because the Luftwaffe was using it as a targeting device of hitting London. So they took that down and it survived. So awesome.
Crafty. That's crafty.
Any hotels you remember while you were in London staying there? They must have amazing hotels as well as amazing theaters. Did you get to stay in some interesting places?
Yeah, I was staying at, when we used to film Whose Line there, they put us in a place called the Langham Hilton, and it was fairly new at that point. It was right across from the old BBC and the All Souls Church. And they had this vodka bar with all these different kind of vodkas, and they had one particular one that was bad for all of us because it just tasted like it was juice. It was a melon vodka. And it came this beautiful little triangular cone-shaped thing that they put in ice. And you go, you drink, and then around 10, you go, wait a minute.
I can't stand up.
Oh. And another place called, across the aisle from that was a place called Memories of India. And it was
Ah,
all, and every night we would have a drink there. Ryan Stiles would leave first, and then 5 minutes later, someone would come through going, call for Dr. Mochrie, call for Dr. Mochrie. Hello. And it'd just be Ryan laughing, and he'd hang up. But yeah, beautiful. It was a beautiful hotel.
yeah,
And
that's
then
what I.
there's some just not so beautiful where it's uh, like the New York ones, where it's basically just four walls, and you can lie down if you sort of figure it out right.
Yeah, the biggest letdown I had was one time we were going to South Beach. We were going to play in some kind of a theater very close to it, and I thought, oh my God! And I checked the theater, the hotel before we got there. I can't remember the name of it, but it was glorious, one of those beautifully restored places. Well, our plane had been delayed. We didn't get there till 11 o'clock at night for a rehearsal the next morning, and by that point they booked out all the rooms. We said, well, what are we going to do? We have to stay here. Well, we have one left.
Always,
I got
always a
this
bad
room.
thing.
It was just a shoebox size. It was right beside the elevators and was sand all over the floor. And I could hardly move in it. It was so tiny. And I thought, oh my God, my one trip to South Beach and stay in this fabulous Art Deco hotel. I can't even stand up. Oh, it was a lunch bag
One of,
letdown.
one of the hotels in Milwaukee was quite beautiful, but it was also having a barbershop quartet convention. So at 4 in the morning, drunken quartets were just singing Sweet Adeline, and it was, it just kind of ruined the moment.
Oh dear. Different clock than yours.
Yes.
Let me see what's next on our list here. Oh yeah, this is in Seattle. This is one of those orchestra halls that's quite new, which is not, which was fascinating to me because I've been playing with these jewel boxes, and this is one that it's called the. Let me get this absolutely right so I don't mess it up. The Benaroya Hall, it's called, because Mr. Benaroya put $15 million into the refurbishment, and they've been looking for a home in Seattle, and this is a box within a box. But I was taken on a tour of this, and what was astounding was no matter how far back you were, they use modern technology, and it sounds a bit shady, but every seat had a speaker underneath it, and they could balance the orchestra sound or whoever was playing electronically. And I thought it was a bit of a cheat, but it was pretty awesome because they said, it was during a rehearsal, he said, just go to the worst seat in the house, sit in the very back. And I sit back, and it was as if I was front row center, hearing the full sound of the orchestra coming at me. And it didn't feel like it was coming out of speakers. It just felt beautifully balanced, and I felt brought right into the stage, no matter where I was sitting. So it's one of those things where if you do invest money into the bells and whistles of what we can do acoustically, you can really add a lot to the shows.
Yeah, I've gotten into classical lately because I did a show with the Second City where we would go around to symphonies.
Yeah, I saw you do it with the TSO. You were awesome.
Yeah, and just being on stage and having an orchestra play behind you is just like, oh, this is fantastic. So I started getting into Mozart and all the classic guys. But yeah,
Don't get all technical now.
yeah, I don't want to lose you all.
No.
But it was because I'd never been exposed to classical music really, and it had to. It took me being like literally standing in front of a classical orchestra to really get into it. It
I
truly,
totally hear you.
oh, it's amazing, just amazing.
That's how I felt doing Beethoven Lives Upstairs, because you and I both come from a theater background where we had no classical training of that kind of feel. And here I was about to do my first concert of speaking over a symphony orchestra playing Beethoven's greatest hits. And my biggest fear was that the orchestra would start and I would just lose all my lines, because how would I possibly remember a word when all this huge sound would come behind? But it was the very first bar played. I went, oh, this is
Yeah,
amazing. And you just get totally surrounded, and it just feels fantastic. And I fell in love with it. But the fear was it's just going to jolt it right out of me. But in fact, the opposite happened. It was like,
power of music. It's
yeah,
just, yeah, it truly touches your soul.
yeah, yay, lovely. Let's see where our next picture takes us. My list here, just so oh yeah, this is cool. So there you are in Sydney, Australia.
Yeah. Well, wow, that's an artsy shot.
Yeah.
If you put
The
some
Sydney
money
Opera.
in the budget for Photoshops. Yeah, we did a tour of Australia and New Zealand, and one of the places we got to play was the Sydney Opera House, which is amazing. I think the design, the designer was inspired by orange slices.
Huh.
Uh, they were having trouble coming. He had sort of this rough idea of what the design was supposed to be. It was supposed to take 4 years to make. It took 14. And the architect never saw it finished. He left like halfway through, but it was like he figured out how to make it work when he had an orange for breakfast. Somehow. There's
Wow.
more to the story, so Google it. I'm sure
Okay.
it's very interesting.
Glorious.
But yeah, and lovely as you would think inside an opera house. Amazing acoustics, and it has quite a few theaters. I can't remember how many, but we got to play. It was Greg Proops, Brad, and I doing. And a lot of these shows, you go, how is this possible? Where we're just making up crap in this place that is built for anyone else but us. But it's what I loved about it was none of us took it for granted. We just realized how special it was that we got a chance to play in these amazing spaces and be a part of the history of it. It's I recommend everyone, if you're not, everyone go into theater just for a year or two, and then
just to get your
yeah,
toe wet.
yeah, just see what it's like. Go through some theaters. You immediately, once you're on the theater, it's a whole different feeling from anything else you've had in life.
Jump in, have an adventure.
Just jump in. People say it's hard. It's not that hard. We just don't want a lot of people doing it. Go ahead.
I was thinking as I was seeing this picture when you sent it to me of what it feels like to fly overseas, because I did a trip to Singapore, I also did a trip to Kuala Lumpur, and I have my own personal way of dealing with world travel. It took me 32 hours from leaving my house to get to the hotel at Kuala Lumpur. Uh, I'll share mine in a second. Do you have a method of travel that allows you to survive and to arrive halfway refreshed for dealing with?
I've always, well, one of my things that I think has got me to where I am today is stamina. My thing always was, I'm just hanging in till everyone else quits or dies. So I'm going to be, so I would try to sleep fairly early on in the flight. Trying to think, like we went to India and Japan, very long flights, but I just actually just made sure I had a lot of water, and that seemed to help. Otherwise, no, I was fine. And then once you get there, stay up to your bedtime, which
Aha.
sometimes was a little hard.
Well, my theory is kind of along those lines, but mine was don't sleep at all.
Oh,
Stamina is a big part of what I try to do too, is take advantage of the airline service to eat and drink every time you can, every 15 or 20 minutes, order something, whether it's liquid or food. Stay up, stay up, stay up. And so that when you do finally get to the place and you do get your bedtime, I sleep like a log.
yeah.
I sleep my full 8 hours and get up and
Good
ready to
plan.
go. So I don't recommend that for everyone, but it's worked in my 2 overseas travels that I simply force myself to stay awake.
And there's certainly stuff you can do. I mean, there's the movies like go on forever, so you can hang in there.
Well, now it is. When I traveled to Kuala Lumpur, we had the choice of 3 movies. I watched Patch Adams 4 times.
Okay, well, that's a little,
That was really rough. That was hard to stay awake after after the second or
I can't
third.
even imagine. 4 times.
It was brutal. It was brutal, but I made it.
Oh, God, of all the
Okay,
wrong
let's
ones.
see what we got next here. Oh, I think this is one of mine coming up here. Uh, so here's the Stratford Festival,
Ah, yes.
which I journeyed to from Vancouver. I left you. You were hosting a talk show with John Bryden, and I got to go on as a guest saying I've been cast in Stratford. I'm leaving for Stratford. This is in
Right. Broke the
1984,
news.
end of 83. Sorry.
We broke the news.
That's that you did. You got to break the news that I was traveling to Stratford, and I got to go to this amazing Tanya Mazevich designed stage and theater. It was remarkable. I remember leaving Vancouver with daffodils in my hand in early February for late February rehearsal start, and just about got ran over by a snowmobile when I got off the train in Stratford. I thought, oh my God, talk about culture shock. But this theater was unbelievable. I'll never forget my first entrance onto that stage, one of the vomitoriums, and rightly called vomitoriums for this story, is that it was the first preview for Romeo and Juliet. My bigger part was coming up later in the season. I was going to be playing Lorenzo in Merchant of Venice, but I started understudying Romeo and playing Samson, who starts the first fight in, do you bite your thumb and all?
Right. I remember that one.
Remember that well from theater school. So I had to come up one of these vomitoriums with Simon Bradbury, who was playing Gregory, and we were going to, after the first soliloquy of two households, both alike in dignity, when that finished, we were going to come up and start the first fight. And so I was, oh my God, it was packed with people, 2,300 people. It was a matinee, very excited. I was waiting, and we have a cue light down in the vomitorium at the bottom that is on red when it's standby, and then it flashes red when just before you go, and then it goes green when you go on. So that was the theory. So as we're waiting, the house lights went down. Out comes, now here's the twist, is the person who was supposed to deliver the opening monologue, the soliloquy, two households, Max Helpman, decided he didn't want to do it. He didn't know it well enough, so he was going to give it to his understudy. So the night before, he said, I'm going to do a bad Australian accent. I'll give it to my understudy. He said, give it to my understudy. I'm not doing it. So in their brilliance, Stratford decided, no, they won't give it to his understudy. They'll get somebody they think looks more like him. And so they gave it to somebody who'd never seen the part before, who tried to learn it overnight. So here we are in the tunnel. My cue light goes on to stand by. Out comes this guy in a white robe, and says, very nervously, two households. Dead silence. And then you hear from up in the gods, from the stage manager, both alike in dignity. Both alike in dignity. And then he made up the weirdest monologue I've ever heard in my life, the soliloquy, that's the first lines of Romeo and Juliet. And my light's flashing. I'm looking at Simon. My first time ever on the stage was to come up in the middle of a big mistake. My God, heart jumping out of my mouth. Anyway, all was fine after that first show. We got through it, but that was my first time stepping onto the stage, just dripping sweat and pain and fear.
How did an actor get away with saying, I don't want to do it?
Well, it's because it's Max Helpman. He'd been with the company for 30 years, and he could say, I've got a million Max Helpman stories. If you come on my theater tours, I promise, around a bar, I'll tell several of them that you can only hear around a bar. They're pretty special. And a couple only I witnessed, which I'm really excited about. Before we get to our last couple of slides here, I just want to say to people watching that if you have any questions for Colin or for me, please jot them down and we will answer those questions. We're going to take a minute shortly, Colin, just before we finish, to take a look at some of those questions. And then we're going to give away a copy of your book, your wonderful book, that I will come and pick up at your house and find a way to get to the person who chose it. I'm excited that we get to give away this book. You say several copies at home?
Oh God, I have more than enough copies. I can get to everybody here.
There it is. Not quite the classics. Colin Mochrie, tell me, just to give us a little précis about how that came about and
my agent, who really dislikes me having downtime, said, hey, why don't you write a book? And I said, well, part of the reason is I don't have anything to say, really. I could write about my life, but it's been good and a couple of funny things happened, but not a book's worth. And also it's a lot of work. Part of the reason I improvise is I'm truly lazy. I like to make up stuff as it comes along. So based on that info, he got me a book deal. And I was so mad. And I thought, okay, well, I'll improvise. So there's a game called First Line, Last Line, where you get the first line of the scene from the audience, and that's what you start with. And you also get the last line from the audience, and that's where you aim towards. So I took the first and last line of classic novels and then made up the middle, 12 short stories. And the hardest part was writing it, but also finding classic stories that have a great first line and a great last line. Pretty rare.
Okay, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
Called Me Ishmael, great. The last line is like a run-on sentence.
Oh dear.
Like, oh, yeah, but it's good. There's some really good stories in it.
I bet. Give me one example of a first line and a last line of one of the ones you did of which story was launched.
Okay, my first one. Okay, I got really cocky um, because my first story was a Sherlock Holmes one, and it flowed out of me. I thought, oh, so this is what it's like to write. How easy is this? And that was the last fun I had.
Okay.
So that was it was from A Study in Scarlet, but in this story, Sherlock Holmes invents stand-up comedy. But
Ah,
here's the first line. Mr. Sherlock Holmes, who was usually very late in the mornings, save upon those not infrequent occasions when he was up all night, was seated at the breakfast table. I like that because it was pretty
yeah,
open.
sure.
And then the last line was, and you'll have to get the book to see how the middle goes.
Yes.
Nothing like, and the last line was, might I trouble you to be ready in half an hour and we can stop at Marcini's for a little dinner on the way.
Oh, beautifully bookended.
It
You
is.
invented stand-up comedy in between that.
Yeah. And for the purists out there, I have to say, I also did The Cat in the Hat, but because of possible litigation by the Dr. Seuss, I kind of had to change the first line.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But aside from that,
Enough said.
totally on board.
Enough Dr. Seuss controversy for today.
Okay.
That's awesome. Well, I just have one more little slide to look at, and it's mainly talking about the kind of hotels we stayed at. And this is my favorite hotel of all time. This is in Hawaii, Waikiki, the Halakalani Hotel. And this is the Orchid Pool. Quick story there, and then we'll go to questions. The joy of that was I was contacted by the booking company for these tours, and they said, we just got a request for you to go to Hawaii, but they're not willing to pay overtime for the travel. And I said, well, wait a minute, what? But they did say, if you're willing to accept a stay in a hotel instead of overtime, they'll offer that. And so they said, so it didn't sound very good. So we're thinking about saying no. I said, wait. What kind of hotel? Well, it turns out that the orchestra is connected to the Halakalani Inn, which is one of these 4 diamond resorts. Arlene and Bobby was turning 2. Our son was turning 2. He got to have his second birthday in this place. We had it a week in this most glorious hotel. And at the end of that week, we did 1 show and flew home. It was absolutely breathtaking. And one of those adventures where you go, oh my God, if I hadn't spoken up and said, well, wait, overtime be darned.
My performing track record in Hawaii has not been very good.
Oh, is that right? Little
Yeah,
distracted,
the first time,
perhaps?
my wife Deb and I, we were hired to do a corporate, and we got there, and the very first thing they said to us was, we want you to teach an improv workshop. We went, oh, okay, out on the beach. We went, what? Won't that be distracting? No, the people, they're being picked up from the airport, they're going to the hotel and change, and then they'll come to the beach and you guys teach them improv. I said, you know what? There's really no reason for this to happen because I'm going to tell you straight up, I'm not going to enjoy it. Deb isn't, and these people will definitely not enjoy it. It'll be great.
Oh my God.
An hour we had to do.
And were they exhausted from their flight?
The organizers stood there to make sure that we did it. And they'd flown us out in Canada 3000, which went bankrupt while we were there, and we had to pay for our own tickets back.
Oh Lord. So a little different adventure, different Hawaiian adventure than we had. Yes.
No, but I'm glad you had a nice one.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to go to our questions here and see if we have some questions for
Oh,
Colin.
it's better than your Singapore Colin.
Let's see. Okay, Janice is asking, could you please each comment on your longest running theater adventure? Thanks for the laughs, says Janice.
Longest running theater.
Well,
I guess
did you ever do a long run of something? I mean,
I'm trying to. This tour I've been doing is 18 years, but it's not consecutive. I'm trying to think of something. Oh, when I did the Norman Conquests in Vancouver, It was a co-op show. Derek knows most of the people. We had to make our own sets, something that Derek and I also did, even
Yes,
though not our top skill, we became quite good at making wainscoting and the like.
I think we did.
So yeah, we did the Norman Conquest, which is 3 plays that take place over the same period of time, but in different rooms of the house. And it became incredibly popular. I think we were held over like for 2 months. So that was that was rare.
It's funny, because that's the show that twigged for me. We did that at Soulpepper, Alan Ayckbourn's Norman Conquest, and I got to play Reg, and you played Tom, right?
Yeah, you were
And
Reg?
I was Reg. And what I remember, when I think long running, we had quite a long run. We again held it over and brought it back, and was the night that we would do the day we would do all 3 shows in one day. Did you do that?
No, I don't think so.
And I just found it fantastic to do a show. We'd start the first one at 1 o'clock, then we do a show at 4, and then we do a show at 7:30. And I remember stopping the applause during the curtain call and asking, I said, I just want to, by a show of hands, this is a theater at Soulpepper that held about 250 people. I said, how many people have been with us the whole day, thinking I might see 5 or 6 hands? About 200 people raised their hand. They've been with us the whole marathon. And that happened every weekend. We do 3 shows and
And they're such funny, great plays.
oh, hysterical.
So hysterical. When it was directed by a friend, Roy Surratt, and they had one day where we did it chronologically. So we had the 3 sets. You'd do it, then when someone left to go to another set, that scene would happen over there. It was just mind-boggling, the artistry that went into writing those plays.
Yeah. Oh, Alan Ayckbourn's a genius. Still alive, still writing shows at 82 or 3 now. That's a trip I'd like to make, is to go to his theater.
Yeah.
Here's a
And
question.
yeah, I saw you in Bedroom Farce.
I did Bedroom Farce, another
Which you
Ayckbourn
were
play that.
excellent in. You were just excellent in.
Oh, thanks. That was fun too. I think Corey and I had the best parts in that. The old couple who eat fish sandwiches in bed together. I loved that part. Here's a question for you from Trotter. Colin, what has been your most memorable part?
Okay, I'm going to say the last one I did, only because I can still remember it.
Okay.
I mean, there are different parts throughout your theatrical career that mean different things. For me, when I did a play called Shadow of a Gunman in Studio 58, that was kind of a turning point for me. So it's very dear to me. And the Norman Conquest was another one. But I got to play the Fool in a production of King Lear with Shauna McKenna playing Lear, and incredible Shakespearean actors. And so, no, I shouldn't have been there. But I got like a front row seat every night to these amazing performers. I learned so much. I don't think I got the lines right, right once. We'd come off stage and Shauna McKenna would turn to me and go, closer. Which I loved. And she scared the hell out of me because she's quite formidable, but lovely. And by the end, we just had a great time together. And as I say, I learned a lot about that, about being fearless in theater. Because, in improv, you're kind of fearless just because you're making up stuff from the, but there's also a fearlessness you can do in theater that keeps within the script and keeping it, and it's believing in yourself and the people you're working with, and allowing yourself to maybe go beyond and trust your director to go, okay, pull back.
Well, I hear you say that, and I think about how people that I know that have been able to be on stage with you when you're improvising, and how they talk about that same genius as you talked about in that movie, about seeing how your brain is able to take away the parts of your brain that stop us from really letting the brain do what it's capable of doing. When I see you do what you do so brilliantly and seem so effortlessly, it's astounding to me. So we classical actors are as in awe of you as you seem to see you are of classical actors. So it's a real give and take. So it's wonderful.
That's yeah, and I learned doing the thing with the hypnotist really um, really opened my eyes to ensemble work, because I thought this is just going to be me working my ass off trying to keep all these, and then I realized after a couple of shows, no, they're pure improvisers, because they're just playing off whatever I do, and that just took the show into this whole new direction of being a true ensemble. It wasn't me and five hypnotized people. We were a troupe. It was I love the fact that no matter how long you do this or how long you're in this business, you never walk away going, okay, I know everything now. Everything's
Yeah,
cool.
it's an ongoing education, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, that's a perfect way I think we can sum up today, Colin, about how wonderful this has been to have a chance to reminisce and go through some adventure excitement that we've had in our times. And I just throughout have been thinking how excited I am about the possibility of getting back to it. Hopefully in a number of months, we'll all be through this and back to doing what we love to do, and that is having adventures in front and with people. And I'm sure you're looking forward to that
Absolutely.
too.
And the people out there, thank you for supporting theater. Push that as much as you can. There really is no experience like a live theatrical event where the audience and the actors are building this amazing thing for one night. Because although you're watching, although they're doing the same play night after night, every performance is different. And a lot of it depends on the audience, it depends on the actors. It's never quite the same. So it truly is a once in a lifetime experience.
Fantastic. So I'm going to first of all ask you, I'm holding up behind my hand either one finger or two fingers for who's going to win the book of the two questions we had today. So would
Feel
you
pressure.
choose one or two, Colin?
Two.
It's one. So Janice Baker is going to win our book. She was the first to
Oh,
ask the question. So we'll get Janice to check with our Worldwide Quest people to give her email and address. Peter's saying thank you for a great presentation. You're very welcome, Peter. And that Janice Baker will be receiving your wonderful book. Tell me the title again. It's
not quite the classics.
Not Quite the Classics. That we'll get into Janice's hand. And I will say one more time that I'm hoping to be able to take a group with me to the UK in April of 2022 to see some amazing theater and hopefully have many other theatrical adventures together. So Colin, thank you for being here today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And thank you.
Hopefully we might be doing a tour of the UK in April. So maybe we can,
Oh my
meet
God.
up.
Wouldn't that be
Stuff.
awesome? We could have the gang come and see your show and chat after.
Woo-hoo.
Oh, wouldn't that be great? And thank you all for viewing this today. And I hope that we will cross paths sometime in the future. And again, thank you, Colin. Thank you, everyone. And we'll say so long. Thank you, everybody.